for the opening ceremony was controversial, sure. I've lived in Europe a long time. I have to say, each thing that came up, I was like, oh, it's so French. Oh, it's so French. Oh, I think the US is not going to like this part.
I think we should talk about it.
The Margeteers.
Hi, Marg.
Hi, Margaret.
So I'm really excited because I know we're just jumping on right now to talk about something I'm really excited about. I've been thinking a lot lately about my favorite campaigns and why they're good, why they're interesting. This stems out of a talk I was giving a few weeks ago about neuroscience and marketing. And one of my favorite ads of all time is a Nike ad in which I'll just describe it. We can put the link to it as well, in which what's happening is you're in a busy New York street. The lighting is a bit low and it's very, people are walking everywhere. It's hustle and bustle. And then all of a sudden you sort of see somebody run by and tag or hit somebody. They run into the subway and all of a sudden everybody around that person who's just been hit disperses. And the person who's been hit rolls their eyes and runs. And without a single word being said, you now know that somehow the entire city is in on a game of tag. And it hits all of these markers. It's unexpected. It's, I think, quite delightful. I think it's universal. There's not a word said. Tag is a universal game. It hits like as far as the brand values of Just Do It, the playfulness, and it's just one of those things. I think when you hit an ad or a method of communicating that's nonverbal but is so universal is absolutely stunning. It kind of takes you to the opening segment of Up, right? Not a word is said, but it's universal in this love story, etc. But I just wanted to, so you've just watched it. I mentioned it to you, and you've just watched it, and I'm curious what your thoughts are about this ad and like what did you think of it? Why did you like it? Why did you dislike it? And like, what lessons maybe do you take from it as you start to craft your own sort of advertisements and stories?
Yeah, I definitely liked it. I hadn't ever seen it before, and I'm surprised I hadn't seen it before because I kind of, pat myself on the back every once in a while for exposing myself to as many kinds of advertising and themes, especially with big brands like Nike.
Yeah.
I should have been more aware of it than I was. It was interesting because for me, it kind of felt a little bit dystopian. It took me a moment for me to realize that it was tag.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that one of the things that we can be aware of when we go to create any kind of storytelling content like this is, what might be going on in the world that might kind of give a context to something that normally wouldn't be there. And so, we're sitting here in November of 2024, and here in the States people have been talking about maybe there's going to be civil unrest or another civil war or something like that, and there's we've been living that theme now for a couple of months. And so it's just kind of interesting how current events can shield what you're looking at.
Sure.
Once I kind of took that filter off, I watched it again from the beginning, just with the appreciation of a marketer and storyteller perspective. And then I thought, yeah, this is actually really cool. It's really fun. There's a sense of excitement. There's a sense of intrigue. There's curiosity because you're like, okay, what's going to happen next? Where's this person going to go next? How are these multitudes of people? Because in some of these shots, there's 30 or 40 people.
Yeah.
How are you going to interact with them? And then the context of it being in the city, fun, vibrant. I don't know. I really enjoyed the storytelling, and then I thought it was really so on brand for Nike because it was really about play.
Yes.
And I love that theme.
Yes.
And so, yeah, so those were my perspectives. And if you had asked me 6 months ago, I might have had a different
Different.
take on it. But I thought it was brilliant storytelling. All Nike is
Most.
brilliant.
There's been a couple of other failures, but like, no, it's interesting you mentioned the context and the time of watching it. I think it came out when I was in my 20s and I was living in New York. And so it felt even more visceral to me, but also because New York can be a lonely city, and it can. And at the time, I was working from home when before working home was the thing. Like it wasn't invented yet, really. And so
Okay.
the other part of it is the unity of like we're all playing this game together. Really touched me quite deeply because I was like, oh, in this place where city of strangers, city of this, actually no, we're all in on it, and we're all doing this together, even though it's this big playful game. So I think the things that I like about it, again, I already said, but the universal feeling of it. I mentioned at the beginning of Up, this 10-minute, 11 minutes that makes everyone cry every single time because you just understand the universal passage of time, and I'm getting goosebumps. Uh, and so forth. So I also think, as I've in my past done different things as far as being global leader or local leader or EMEA led, and even when you're EMEA led, how do you do Europe, Middle East, and Africa? How do you still take something maybe from your headquarters or put something out that's going to connect? Because the dream is you're going to connect to as many people as possible with as little iterations as possible, I would say, just from a logistics spend perspective. Of course, localized, there's always the discussion of, are you translating or localizing, which is two different things. So I like that powerful of it. And then I like, again, there's been so many studies that as adults, like we don't play. We need to all play a lot more. We've changed how work is. We've changed. There's guilt if you want to lie on the couch for a day, which, and then equally there's studies that like the best thing you can do for yourself is lie on the couch for a day. So kind of promoting this playfulness outside of professional sports, which you normally see Nike supporting or seeing, when actually no, a game of tag is universal. It's grassroots. We can all be part of it. And I think those are the kind of key themes and lessons I've pulled out from it.
I love it. I think the universality of it was really key, and you touched also on this idea of global reach and having a story or a message that can be understood across the globe. And I think as the world kind of shrinks because of digital transformation,
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing a lot more creatives where there's no voice happening in the action itself. There might be a voiceover that could
Yeah,
be any language, but where they're developing storytelling that's all about the movement, the expression, the context of the advertising itself, and not so much about what people say.
sure.
And so, there was I don't remember any language in this ad whatsoever until the very end when they used the tagline.
Do you know what's just popped into my mind? This is so inappropriate. It's just we've had the Olympics, right? And so what is
Yeah.
more universal than the Olympics? What is more universal of all of these people coming together to be the best in class of what they did? What France did for the opening ceremony was controversial, sure. I lived in Europe a long time. I have to say, each thing that came up, I was like, oh, it's so French. Oh, it's so French. Oh, I think the U.S. is not going to like this part because they're. And what's popped into my mind is, this is not what I mean about universality, but the
Okay.
flirting in the library before it exposes that it's going to be a menage a trois, but just that little coyness. That coyness. So if there's no words and like you're
That's
listening
an
to someone
interesting
across
take.
the hall,
I
I
I like
don't mean that the
I like that. That's an interesting take. That's
I don't
good.
mean the thing that portrays as universal. but just like those moments where you have something like on the world's greatest stage of like this flirting, you go, oh, and you can feel the tension of that, and is something going to happen, is it not? That's what I meant. Pause from there.
Okay.
But I think that that's one of the things we talk about, I guess, in what you're trying to influence with any kind of ad or any kind of market. I think number one, if you can use humor, because everyone's defenses go down quite quickly. You set sort of, there's something that happens in the brain that resets you. But I think there's also something in those universal topics, like those universal situations before opposed to topical situations. Topical being like, what's your weather like? How's the commute? How's this? Universal being more in tune of like your human experience, whether or not that's your private life or work life or something like that. And I think that being able to uncover those moments, I think in my career, primarily in B2B, like if you're able to do something really great from that standpoint, and then something really special happens. So I just think it's a very inspirational piece, and obviously it's made me overthink things in ways I didn't even think. Context is matter.
I love it. I love it. I think, the other thing that's really cool about the universality is when it can be timeless. So, I mean, you're talking about you watched this years ago. It inspired you many years ago.
Not
And
that many.
there's
No,
that.
no, it was many years ago. Fine.
But there's that timeless aspect of the universal message where it transcends, age, it transcends, any lifestyle phase that people might be in. Because how cool is this? Playing tag. The main character, he looks like he's in his mid-20s or something like that, and all the people around him are every age is a full melting pot, because it is New York City, a full melting pot. And so it's applying to everybody, but also not just in who they are, but also kind of where they're at.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So I love that. So I'm older than you, quite a bit older than you. And so I remember, in my early years of watching TV with the family and whatnot, Kodak had commercials for the times of our lives. These are the times of our lives. They
Oh
had a
yeah.
jingle, and they would have a moment, and the whole idea was that the camera catches that moment and makes it eternal, right? And so that was the whole concept. And it was, weddings and whatever it was. And I would sit there on the couch with my mom, and we would both be crying during these
Really.
commercials. Like we would both lose it. We were both emotional people anyway, and then we would feed off each other's energy. But the spark of the energy was coming out of the storytelling of the commercial itself.
That's
And I
great.
thought that they did a brilliant job of that. It's the same thing. So the universality of, here's these life moments that happen. They're big pinnacle moments, and them being emotional or fun or whatever. And something that you're going to want to retain and remember when you're 80,
This
90, 100 years old and flipping through your flip book of your photos, your photo books.
this has, I don't, yeah, this has just come to mind. I don't have a connection. Do you know what always makes me cry?
What?
If you give me a video of like, I'm gonna start crying out. Like if you give me a video like they just showed during like a college football match, American football match, some sort of veteran who came and they portray like gave him the ball, and like all these young men pretend to be tackled around him, and then he goes and scores the touchdown, and like, or the same with like a child who's sick who's always
Yes.
wanted to sing on a screen. It makes me cry every time.
I know.
It's just there's something about it that I'm just, no, you said, look, And I guess that what it's coming down to is this idea of we're all in it together. Maybe it's the community of it that I really love, that it's like everyone knows it's a somewhat preposterous experience, but the idea that these really young boys who on their weekends are trying to like peacock up to these men, pretend this, have like this boyishness and love and empathy to pretend to be tackled so that this 92-year-old man can shuffle into the end zone, kills
I
me
love that. I
every
love
time.
that. Yeah,
I'm
those
talking about those kind of videos.
yes. I mean, it really is the storytelling,
Mm,
and so many times too, there's something in there that's aspirational,
mm,
like that you hope that it will be that way. You hope that your experience is gonna be that way.
yeah,
And so there's a little bit of you projecting yourself into that story, sometimes as the main character, sometimes as someone who's supporting the main character, but you project yourself into it.
yeah,
And you can in some way transport yourself into experiencing it as if it had happened to you, kind of like your dreams do, right?
yeah.
Doing that same thing with really great creative. Yeah. Yeah, I love it.
I love it. That's kind of all I had to say about that. So I think, so so are there lessons? No, it's just that we love these certain ads. I think what's interesting is where you can bring in the human element, where you can bring in the community element, where you can bring in that universal moment that more or less people can understand it, in particular, spanning some cultures, spanning lots of cultures, but spanning also like a nostalgia to a moment in time. I think all of it is where you can, and for everything, it's not just B2C. B2B people are real people. They
Yes.
are humans.
Yes.
They they want to be, trust me, they need a laugh more than anyone. More than anyone. Spent some tough years in B2B. So
Yeah.
don't ever underestimate the power of like connection and humor in your advertisements and communications. And when you need some great moments, we suggest you watch this Nike ad, these Kodak moments that you'll remember. And yeah, that's all I have.
Okay. No, that's really good. I did want to touch on one thing that you mentioned I think is really important for B2B, because so many times in B2B, in particular STEM, like the tech stuff,
Mm-hmm.
the
I
the
feel like
teams or the leadership often they want to get into the feeds and the speeds and the what and the how. And that's not great storytelling. So the great storytelling is, how will businesses or lives be transformed? What's the outcome? We kind of talked
yeah,
about this when we were talking about the creative brief. But, what's the outcome that you're delivering, and what story can you tell around the outcome that's emotive, that will get people excited or emotionally involved in, yes, I want that. I can envision I can envision that end result for myself or for my teams.
mm-hmm.
And life will be glorious when we achieve that. And therefore, yeah, I want that tech, right? Like, there you can do that, and um it's not that it's hard, it's just that you need to put yourself in the role of who that buyer is, and
Sure.
how would you want to feel, what's the outcome that you would hope for, and then do your storytelling around that.
100%.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Mark.
Awesome. Thank you, Margaret.
Talk about
All
it.
marketing and marketing for all.